It was pretty stunning to find out last year when Dylan Viola signed with Nebraska that he was actually only Nebraska's second five-star ever. Don't get me wrong, I realize Nebraska hasn't exactly been a great football program since the modern recruiting era began in 2002. And I also realize they're not exactly in fertile recruiting grounds, but schools like UCLA, Georgia Tech, and Maryland that are objectively worse football programs have managed to score more five-star recruits during this time than Nebraska. In this video, I want to dive into the 10 highest rated recruits that Nebraska has ever signed in the modern recruiting era. And as always, I'll be using the 24/7 composite rankings. Coming in at number 10 is an offensive lineman from the state of Minnesota that signed with the Huskers in the class of 2004, and Lyden Murtha. Murtha would have a Huskers career that was littered by injuries. He would redshirt in the 2004 season as a true freshman, and in the 2005 season, he played 9 games, starting 3 of them due to injuries along the Nebraska offensive line. The following season, in 2006, Murtha would also only start in 3 games, but in contrast, instead of playing just 9 games, he played in all 14 games on the season for the Huskers. In his final season with the Huskers, injuries would still continue to haunt Murtha, as he would only be limited to starting 8 games on the season. Murtha would, however, never play for the Lions, but would be signed off of their practice squad by the Miami Dolphins in 2009. Murtha would, of course, see the field one time for the Dolphins in 2009 before injuries took care of him once again. However, the 2010 season was kinder for Murtha as he played on 9 games for the Dolphins, starting 4 games in place of the injured Vernon Carey. This would be the last we'd see of Murtha in professional football, as he would not play in the NFL again. And overall, I think he had a pretty solid career. Sure, I don't know if he lived up to his lofty recruiting expectations, but that was to no fault of his own. Injuries really killed him. Plus, he seemed to have been a pretty solid player when healthy. Coming in at 9 is class of 2024 starter and tight end Carter Nelson, who is obviously still with the Cornhuskers. Nelson was a big-time signee from a very small town. Growing up in Ainsworth, Nebraska, a town of a little less than 2,000 people, Nelson played 8-man football. Even though it's rare to find kids from such small schools, this did not deter schools like Georgia and Notre Dame from recruiting Nelson, as at times both teams looked like the leaders in the recruitment. Still, Nelson would end up at Nebraska, and they have to be pretty happy with this addition so far, as 7 games so far in the season, Nelson's recorded 8 receptions for 75 yards and 1 touchdown. That's pretty good for a true freshman from such a small town on a Nebraska team that, sure, isn't great, but is by no means a bad team. Nelson appears to have a bright future. In my opinion, he's a really important player if the Cornhuskers want to get back to national prominence. Up next is class of 2020 signee who is still with the Cornhuskers, and Turner Cochran. Cochran's played a lot of football for the Cornhuskers throughout his career. Beginning in the 2020 COVID season, he would play in 3 games with 1 start as a true freshman. In 2021, Cochran would go on to play in every single game for Nebraska and would start the final 11 contest for them. Cochran would start in all 12 games for the Cornhuskers the following season, extending his streak to 23 consecutive starts. In 2024, Cochran would extend his starting streak to 30 consecutive starts. Unfortunately, 7 starts is the only starts he'd get on the season, as he'd miss the rest of the season with an injury. Cochran will return for the 2024 season. He would start the first 4 games of the season before suffering an injury where he has missed the last 3 games so far. We'll see what happens to Cochran the rest of the year. Head coach Matt Ward's been kind of vague on his injury, and if Cochran doesn't play in another game this year, he technically has another year of eligibility, which is pretty crazy. Coming in at 7 is class of 2017 signee Tyjon Lindsley, who was initially committed to Ohio State before flipping to Nebraska late. Lindsley showed some level of potential for the Cornhuskers in his true freshman season, recording 12 catches for 76 yards. Lindsley would return to Nebraska for the 2018 season, recording 3 catches for 22 yards and 2 carries for 9 yards. Unfortunately, he only played in 4 games and would elect to transfer out mid-season after those 4 games. Lindsley would go on to transfer to Oregon State, where he'd actually carve out a decent career, playing 4 years for the Bees while recording 75 receptions for 917 yards, 9 touchdowns, while also having another 3 touchdowns on the ground. Lindsley would briefly play for the Seattle Seahawks practice squad and would appear for them in the preseason as well, before being released after a couple months with them. Currently, he's in the CFL. Coming in at number 6 is defensive back Courtney Grigsby. Grigsby would show flashes of potential as a true freshman, playing in all 11 games while recording 21 tackles on the season. The following years when Grigsby became a key player for Nebraska, recording 46 tackles with 10 pass breakers while being named Big 12 All-Honorable Mention. Grigsby was also the Cornhuskers' primary return man, returning 32 punt returns for an average of 10.4 yards per return. Grigsby would continue the momentum into the 2006 season, finishing with 53 total tackles, 42 of which were solo stops, which is second among Nebraska's defense that year. He would also be named All Big 12 honorable mention for the second consecutive year. His stats would dip a bit as a senior, as he only recorded 27 total tackles and only had 2 interceptions, which matched the total he had the previous year. However, defense isn't where he had the biggest impact on the game. That would be in the return game, where he had 45 returns for a Big 12 record 1,094 yards. This included a 94-yard return touchdown against Kansas State, which was the school's first kickoff return touchdown in 9 seasons. Grigsby would yet again be named All Big 12 honorable mention, and it appeared he had an impact off the field too, being named to the 2008 Big 12 All Academic First Team, while also being named the 2006 Book Behringer Citizen Team. Overall, in his career, he played in 49 games, 37 of which were starts. Grigsby would never play in the NFL, only briefly appearing on practice squads for the Carolina Panthers, St. Louis Rams. He bounced around some developmental leagues like the CFL and a couple of indoor football leagues before ultimately retiring from football. Overall, I think he had a solid career for the Cornhuskers. He made an impact in a variety of different ways. Sure, maybe he didn't live up to his lofty billing and come out of high school, but still a good player. Coming in at 5 is a guy that I'm not all that sure needs much of an introduction. That guy's Ndamukong Suh. I don't think I need to go super in depth on him because I think he's one of the players on the list that most of you are very aware of. But just know, he's one of the most dominant players in college football history. Suh, who spent 5 years at Nebraska, particularly had a very dominant 2009 season, winning the Buckle Nagurski Award, the Chuck Bednarik Award, being named a unanimous All-American. I mean, the guy was a Heisman Trophy finalist too, and a lot of people still argue to this day that he should have won the award. He recorded 21 tackles for a loss, 12 of which were for a sack. This was all capped by a legendary performance in the Big 12 championship game against Texas, which Suh recorded 7 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 6 tackles for a loss. I'm sure he appeared on Colt McCoy and Mac Brown's nightmares for a long time after this performance. I was kind of surprised that Suh played 5 years in Nebraska. I didn't know that, nor did I remember that, but I was pretty young when he was playing. And even some of his early years, he wasn't some insane player, but he turned into one of the greatest defensive players in college football history. Suh, of course, would go on to play in the NFL, getting drafted second overall in the 2010 NFL draft by the Detroit Lions. He'd go on to be a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, a Super Bowl champion. Yeah, this guy is an extremely decorated football player. He did have some controversial moments in the NFL, just ask Aaron Rodgers, but hey, that's beside the point. Coming up next is defensive lineman Baker Steinkohler. Steinkohler would redshirt as a true freshman in 2008, but the following year, he would record 17 tackles while playing in 13 of 14 games. The following year, he would turn the heat up as he renamed honorable mention All Big 12 while starting the first 13 games of the season, recording 46 tackles, 3.5 of which being sacks. As a senior, Steinkohler would be named the captain of the Cornhuskers. He would also be named honorable mention All Big Ten by the media, second team All Big Ten by the coaches, in the Cornhuskers' debut season in the Big Ten, while also recording 47 tackles, 2.5 of which were sacks. Steinkohler would briefly try out the NFL as an offensive lineman, but overall would never make a team, never would play professional football. Coming in at number 3 is running back Aaron Green. I gotta be honest here, I remember Aaron Green playing college football, but I don't remember him playing college football in Nebraska. That's because Green only spent 1 year at the Cornhuskers, recording 105 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns while also having a receiving touchdown, before transferring out to TCU after his freshman year. Green would wind up carving out a very good collegiate career for himself at TCU, rushing for 2,426 yards, 20 touchdowns, while also having 370 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. Despite having a really solid collegiate career, Green would never really carve out a role for himself in professional football, and would bounce around a couple practice squads for a couple of years in the NFL, before finding himself out of football in 2019. Coming in at 2 is the man that inspired this entire video. That man being the Patrick Mahomes cosplayer himself, Dylan Raiola. It's no secret that Nebraska getting Raiola was huge. I mean, he'd been committed to Georgia and before that Ohio State before he winded up with the Cornhuskers. I mean, he had his fair share of connections to Nebraska. His father Dominic was a former stud offensive lineman for them that played in the NFL for a number of years, and his uncle Donovan is actually currently the offensive line coach for them. Raiola is, of course, the Cornhusker starting quarterback at the moment. Has gotten off to a pretty decent start in his career, throwing for 1,592 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Sure, everything isn't pretty with Raiola. I mean, the last game he tossed 3 picks against Indiana, but the guy's a reason for optimism, for hope, for the future of Nebraska football. That hasn't been a thing for a while, and it's hard to find a quarterback with as much arm talent that Raiola has. Coming to NFS is a guy who I had never even heard of prior to making this video, but after doing some research on him, a lot more people should know the name Marlon Lucky. His true freshman season in 2005 was largely pretty uneventful. The following year, he ended up in a four-man rotation at running back, where he rushed for 728 yards, finishing second on the team, catching 32 passes for 383 yards, while also having at least one reception in 13 of 14 games. Heck, Lucky even threw a 25-yard touchdown pass to Nate Swift against Texas. Man could do it all. Man, the following years when Lucky really went off. He went for 1,019 yards, 9 touchdowns. On top of that, as a running back, he had 75 receptions for 705 yards and 3 touchdowns. 75 receptions as a running back. That's 1,724 total yards, 12 total touchdowns. Insane. Getting those 75 passes was actually a single season record for Nebraska at the time. The following year, Lucky would not quite put up the same numbers. He'd only rushed for 517 yards, 7 touchdowns, and only had 26 receptions for 288 yards and 1 touchdown. It's really hard for him to match or even come close to the previous year's numbers, as the previous year's numbers are so insane. Lucky would go undrafted in the 2009 NFL draft and would briefly be on the Cincinnati Bengals practice squad. Would never actually play in the NFL, would bounce around a couple of development leagues. It just seemed Lucky never got much of a shot in the NFL. Man, the dude was one heck of an athlete. I went back and watched some of his highlight reels. He was so much fun to watch in Nebraska. But anyways, thank you everybody so much for watching, and please like and subscribe for more similar content. Thank you so much.